Mizuki Ashia's hair fell in uneven clumps onto the floor as she cut it herself, her movements careful but resolute. Across from her, Julia Maxwell watched with visible unease, her concern growing with every snip of the scissors. Mizuki remained focused, unfazed by the repeated worries directed at her. She had already finalized the transfer paperwork, chosen her new school, and secured her place. Convincing her parents to let her leave the country had been the most difficult obstacle, and now that it was done, there was no room for hesitation. The decision to move across the ocean had not been made lightly. All of it was driven by a single person. Whether that made the boy fortunate or burdened was impossible to tell. By the time Mizuki arrived in Japan, reality wasted no time catching up with her. She found herself sprinting through crowded streets, narrowly avoiding collisions as she rushed forward. Apologies spilled from her instinctively as she wove past strangers. Upon reaching Osaka Private High, she dashed through the gate and into the building, her mind fixed on locating Class 1C. Her hurried steps echoed down the hallway until she collided with someone head-on. The impact sent her stumbling, and the boy she had bumped into instinctively helped her regain her balance. His casual remark about her appearance struck her with immediate panic. The risk of being discovered was ever present, and she could not afford attention. In her haste to escape, she abandoned her bag behind, offering only the excuse of being late before disappearing down the hall. She burst into the classroom moments later, visibly flustered. Her arrival drew attention, but the teacher quickly moved things along. Her introduction followed without incident, and she was presented to the class as Ashia Kun, a transfer student from America. The reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. Her relief was short-lived. The same boy from the hallway appeared at the classroom door and wordlessly returned her forgotten bag by placing it on her head. The realization hit her instantly. Izumi Sano stood right in front of her. The very person she had crossed an ocean for was now in the same room, casually re-entering her life. During the break, Mizuki observed her surroundings carefully. She had prepared herself mentally for attending an all-boys school, but experiencing it firsthand was overwhelming. The energy, the noise, the constant movement, it was far more intense than she had imagined. Still, she felt fortunate. Being in the same class as Sano felt like a small miracle. When she approached him, her sudden and poorly timed declaration drew immediate attention. The reaction from the class was swift, filled with teasing and laughter. The misunderstanding settled in almost instantly. To everyone else, she was simply another boy confessing to another boy. Sano's rejection was firm and uncomfortable, and any attempt she made to clarify was cut short when he walked away, leaving the tension behind him. Despite the embarrassment, Mizuki refused to be discouraged. She had not come this far to turn back. While most of the class viewed her behavior as strange, Shuichi Nakatsu found it amusing. He took interest in her boldness, noting that he had never seen anyone confess so quickly after transferring. Mizuki downplayed the incident, insisting she was only trying to make friends, though her concern about Sano's reaction lingered. Nakatsu brushed off her worries easily. He introduced himself with confidence, boasting about his speed and reputation as a forward on the soccer team despite being a first year. After classes ended, Nakatsu took it upon himself to guide Mizuki to the dorms, explaining that they were both assigned to Dorm 2. The school's 3-dorm system made sense given the number of students enrolled on athletic and academic scholarships. Nakatsu proudly counted himself among them, having entered through soccer. His curiosity about her life abroad quickly surfaced, leading to assumptions that left Mizuki visibly uncomfortable. Before the conversation could spiral further, Dr. Hokuto Umeda appeared suddenly, physically correcting Nakatsu and reprimanding his misunderstanding. Known among the students as a sadistic presence, the doctor greeted Mizuki with mild interest, clearly scrutinizing her more closely than others had. He mentioned having heard about the transfer student before casually leaving, suggesting a visit to the infirmary if needed. At the dorms, Mizuki's excitement returned briefly when she spotted Sano's name on a mailbox. That excitement quickly turned to shock when she realized they were sharing a room. Nakatsu commented on Sano's displeasure at losing his private space, explaining that he had been sulking over the inconvenience. He reassured Mizuki that sharing a room would become normal soon enough. Taiki Kaishima, Nakatsu's roommate, appeared suddenly and startled Nakatsu. Taiki already knew Mizuki's name, which struck her as odd. As they continued walking, Mizuki was suddenly tackled by a dog named Yujiro. The owner apologized profusely, but Nakatsu found the behavior strange, noting that Yujiro was usually only friendly toward girls. Panic flared within Mizuki, but Nakatsu quickly dismissed the possibility, joking that while her face could pass as feminine, her flat chest made the idea laughable. Though relieved, Mizuki bristled at the comment. Inside the room, Sano avoided conversation entirely. Mizuki attempted to clear the misunderstanding from earlier, explaining her admiration for his past as a high jumper. This finally caught his attention, though his response was guarded. He revealed that he had quit high jump entirely. The revelation stunned her, and her reaction only irritated him further. He left the room abruptly, unwilling to engage. Later that evening, after settling in, Mizuki encountered Minami Nanba, the second-year resident advisor. He introduced himself and explained the dorm rules, commenting on her appearance in a way that made her uncomfortable. Before the interaction could end, Seni Nakao burst into the scene, accusing Mizuki of stealing his role as the school idol before fleeing dramatically. Mizuki soon learned that rumors had already spread, elevating her to instant popularity. Some students had even begun selling candid photos of her. Nanba intervened, scolding the offender for violating privacy, but Mizuki's unease only deepened. The reality of her situation began to sink in. Nakatsu later found her to invite her to dinner, issuing a crude warning about Nanba along the way. Overwhelmed, Mizuki stepped outside for air and spotted Sano resting nearby. Observing him up close, she noticed how peaceful he looked asleep. Yujiro reappeared, eager to play, and Mizuki used the distraction to sit beside Sano. When he nearly fell, she caught him instinctively, her face flushing as he leaned against her shoulder. The moment ended abruptly when Yujiro piled on and Sano woke in confusion. Mizuki managed to deflect suspicion with a quick excuse, earning a small laugh from him. During physical education the next day, Mizuki's athletic ability stunned everyone. Her trial run shattered the school record for the 100-meter dash, drawing attention from every sports team. Nakatsu grew competitive, while captains from soccer, track, rugby, baseball, and basketball all attempted to recruit her at once. She fled, only impressing them further with her speed. She escaped through a window and found Sano asleep yet again, hidden in the bushes. Getting too close, she nearly crossed a line before the noise of the captains snapped her back to reality. When Sano woke and redirected the search away from her, she fled once more, unable to face him. Later, Nakatsu challenged her to a casual soccer match. The encounter ended badly when she was knocked unconscious. As Sano carried her to the infirmary, he noticed something off about her build and weight. When she awoke, Nakatsu was escorted out, and Dr. Umeda approached her calmly. His earlier suspicions had been confirmed. He revealed that he knew the truth. Mizuki Ashiya was not a boy at all. The narrative shifts back to Mizuki's middle school years, specifically a visit to her grandmother. On the television, an announcer introduced a first-year student favored to win the high jump, Izumi Sano. Though Mizuki initially expected to be unimpressed, she found herself flushing as she witnessed a unique beauty in his technique. In the present, Mizuki felt trapped after being discovered by the school doctor. Her anxiety was momentarily relieved when Sano returned to the room with her bag, inadvertently saving her from further interrogation. Despite the tension, the doctor expressed interest in their next meeting. As Mizuki headed back to the dorms, she wondered who had carried her to the infirmary. The thought of Sano being her rescuer made her blush, though she quickly tried to dismiss any romantic implications. Upon returning to their room, she found Sano already asleep. As she contemplated how to handle the doctor's scrutiny, Sano lay awake, reflecting on the moment he had picked her up. He harbored no doubts about her secret and wondered if he truly was the only one who had noticed, struggling to make sense of the situation. The following morning, Mizuki and Nakatsu encountered a crowd gathered around the school bulletin board. Mizuki recoiled in shock at a headline titled, "The New Transfer Student's a Dangerous Pretty Boy." Sano promptly tore the photo down and discarded it. He sternly warned Wataru that there would be consequences if he attempted such a stunt again. Observing Wataru seething with resentment, Mizuki took matters into her own hands and struck him in the face, demanding he cease his behavior. Dr. Umeda, who had been watching the scene with clinical interest, grabbed Mizuki by the wrist. He assured her he meant no harm, explaining that he was merely checking for swelling. Mizuki pulled away, citing her background in self-defense, which only seemed to intrigue the doctor further. He reminded her that he was still awaiting her decision regarding her stay at the school. After classes, Mizuki attempted to walk with Sano, but he departed so quickly that she felt certain he was avoiding her. She walked back with Nakatsu instead, who noted her somber mood and assumed it was due to the morning's tabloid scandal. As he looked at her, Mizuki seemed to sparkle in his eyes, leaving him confused as to why his heart was pounding. Their walk was interrupted when Mizuki spotted Sano talking to a girl, prompting her to pull Nakatsu away to avoid being seen. Mizuki later used the dog, Yujiro, as a pretext to spy on Sano's conversation. The girl, Rika, was a figure from Sano's past who was pleading with him to return to high jumping. She believed his passion remained, despite a past accident. Sano denied her claims, insisting his leg was fully healed and that quitting was his own choice. However, Rika remained convinced that he had only been injured because he was protecting her. The stakeout ended abruptly when Yujiro barked and dragged a mortified Mizuki into the open. She feigned an excuse about the dog's erratic behavior and made a quick exit. Though she initially worried that Sano and Rika were a couple, she felt a deeper sadness over how little she knew about Sano's past or his accident. When Sano caught up to her on the way to dinner, she tentatively asked about the girl. Sano clarified that Rika was simply the manager of his middle school track team. Mizuki was also surprised to see the bond between Sano and Yujiro. Sano explained that he had rescued the dog from being taken to a shelter after the original owner's new husband refused to keep him. This explained Yujiro's general distrust of men, making his affection for Sano all the more significant. When Mizuki confronted Sano about his avoidant behavior, he struggled to explain that he simply didn't know how to interact with a girl. Before the conversation could deepen, Sano had to lunge forward to pull Mizuki out of the path of a vehicle. Pinned against a wall in his arms, Mizuki felt a surge of determination. She didn't want to be apart from him. Mizuki finally revisited Dr. Umeda to give him her answer. Outside the office, she met Rika again, who shared that she had been discussing Mizuki with Sano. Rika laughed off the idea of being Sano's girlfriend, though she admitted she wouldn't have minded dating him in middle school. She then asked Mizuki for a favor, to convince Sano to meet her one last time. During dinner, Mizuki relayed the message that Rika would be waiting by the park. Sano reacted with annoyance, frustrated by the constant concern of those around him. Seeing her distress, Nakatsu stepped in to comfort her, telling her not to mind Sano's temperament. In a casual moment, Mizuki took a sip of Nakatsu's peach juice and left, leaving him stunned by the realization of an indirect kiss, a moment quickly ruined when another friend snatched the drink away. The next day, Mizuki found Sano watching the high jumpers while he walked Yujiro. She felt a sense of relief, especially after he confirmed he had spoken with Rika and cleared the air. That night, as she showered, Mizuki reflected on her conversation with the doctor. She had confessed that she came to the school because a high jumper had inspired her to take up track herself. She dreamed of jumping with him one day and told Umeda that she refused to drop out, regardless of his threats. The doctor, appearing bored, told her he would have expelled her immediately if she had tried to use seduction to stay, but ultimately told her to do as she pleased. Mizuki had hugged him in gratitude, an act that the doctor, who was openly gay, found more annoying than endearing. He noted that her disguise would never fool a medical professional. The peace was interrupted when Sano accidentally walked in as she was finishing her shower. He asked her to hand him his watch, which he had left behind. As he left, he wondered why she hadn't closed the curtain, while Mizuki remained frozen, hoping that since he had only seen her back, her secret remained safe. That night, Nakatsu lay awake in bed, unable to sleep. Thinking back to when Sano mentioned that Mizuki was in the shower, he wondered why the sound of a guy showering bothered him so much. He tried to stop his mind from imagining Mizuki's physique, swearing to himself that he liked women. The next morning, Sano, Mizuki, and Nakatsu arrived late to class. They looked as though they had barely slept, earning them the nickname the Three Baggy-Eyed Brothers. Since they couldn't even stay awake during lectures, the teacher ordered them to report to his office after class. When they arrived, one of Nakatsu's friends wasn't surprised to see him there, though Nakatsu seemed genuinely worried. Mizuki leaned in close to ask if something was bothering him, but as Nakatsu looked down at her face, he felt suddenly embarrassed and ran out of the room. Later, while everyone else went to get lunch, Mizuki told the group she was going to buy some bread. In reality, she was suffering from the first day of her period. She had never regretted being a girl as much as she did that day. Leaving the nurse's office, she reflected on how Dr. Umeda discovering her secret had actually been helpful, though it still left her feeling conflicted. She then bumped into Rika, who demanded she stay away from Sano, accusing Mizuki of following him around. Before Mizuki could explain, Rika snapped that Mizuki didn't know anything about the situation. She insisted that the Sano, who had quit the high jump, the one who couldn't win, wasn't the real him. Mizuki countered that Rika was the clueless one. She explained that just because Sano wasn't jumping didn't mean he was worthless. She didn't care about his titles, she simply loved seeing the way he jumped. Enraged by her words, Rika was about to hit Mizuki when Sano intervened. Rika claimed she was doing everything for his sake, but Sano asked when he had ever requested her help. He explained that the reason he couldn't jump was that he choked under pressure, a fact Rika knew well. He told her never to return and stormed off with Mizuki. Mizuki pulled away and scolded Sano for speaking to Rika so harshly, but he admitted he no longer cared. On her way back to her room, Mizuki collected a package. Noe and Sekim saw her with the box and, reminding her they were buddies, tried to claim a share of the contents. Shortly after, she found Nakatsu pacing in front of her door. Turning his back to her, he offered to share some sweets his mother had brought. Seeing Mizuki's eyes light up, Nakatsu privately thought she looked adorable. Inside her room, she opened the box, which was filled with snacks that Sekim and No happily helped themselves to. Fortunately, there was nothing incriminating among the food. However, while looking through the rest of the box, a photo of a girl named Julia fell out. Nakatsu assumed she was Mizuki's girlfriend but was relieved to learn they were just best friends. There was also a tightly wrapped item with a letter attached. Reading the letter gave Mizuki a bad feeling, but before she could stop the boys, they tore the package open to reveal a dress. She quickly played it off as a silly joke from her brother. Sano walked in, dropped his bag on the table, and ignored Mizuki completely before leaving to take Yujiro for a walk. After a phone call with Julia cheered her up, Mizuki resolved to fix things with Sano. However, when he returned, he barely replied to her attempts at conversation before ignoring her again. Despite this, she persisted, trying to talk to him at every opportunity. 5 days passed since their fight, and Mizuki was losing hope as nothing she tried seemed to work. Back in their room, she attempted to strike up a conversation again, only to receive dry answers. When she remarked that the situation reminded her of newlyweds fighting, Sano snapped. He pinned her against the wall and demanded to know if she understood why he had spoken to Rika that way, accusing her of never thinking things through before storming out. Meanwhile, Nakatsu had been feeling jealous after seeing Sano walk past him. Sensing something was wrong, he rushed into the room to find Mizuki breaking down in tears. Nakatsu wanted to hold her, but knowing he couldn't, he simply patted her head and encouraged her to let it all out. At the same time, Sano, feeling frustrated that he seemed to be the only one affected by the situation, returned to the room. However, seeing Nakatsu's shoes at the door, he immediately turned back. The next day, Mizuki's eyes were so swollen from crying that she couldn't get out of bed early. Namba approached her, noted her red eyes, and offered to listen to her troubles. Elsewhere, on the rooftop, Nakatsu confronted Sano, asking how he felt about Mizuki. Nakatsu declared that if it meant Mizuki wouldn't cry again, he wouldn't even mind becoming gay. Sano told him to stop interfering in things he didn't understand. Catching a glimpse of Mizuki and Namba together, Sano bolted off, intending to save her from the notorious womanizer. When Sano arrived downstairs, they were gone. He found Wataru, who knew their location but only wanted to trade the information for scoop photos. Under the pressure of Sano's threats, Wataru confessed they had gone to the student council room. Sano rushed there, briefly wondering why he was so bothered. He found Mizuki and Namba having coffee. As Namba stepped out, he warned Sano to stop bullying their idol. Alone with Mizuki, Sano finally explained why he had quit jumping. The district qualifiers had been a special meet where doing well meant a recommendation to a famous track and field school. In middle school, he thought it was his last chance, but one night he had to save Rika from being hit by a car. He believed that if he had truly tried, he might have avoided the accident entirely. His hesitation in that moment was the reason he began choking under pressure. However, Sano revealed that his mindset had changed and he wanted to try jumping again, refusing to live with regret a second time. Mizuki was so happy to hear this that she began to cry. When she asked what changed his mind, he replied that he thought it was best to simply try taking it seriously. This made her question if he hadn't been trying his best before. At the sound of the bell, Sano walked away, thinking to himself that she was incredibly dense. In the locker room following practice, Sano discovered a towel and a water bottle accompanied by a note praising his hard work. He immediately recognized who had left them. Upon entering their room, he offered Mizuki a bottle of juice, a gesture that delighted her as it signified he had acknowledged her earlier act of kindness. However, she found herself pondering whether leaving a towel for another boy was considered strange or perhaps too feminine. Unbeknownst to her, Sano was struggling with how to converse with a girl, while she remained unaware that he had already discovered her secret. Consequently, they both silently concluded that the situation was fine. By the time he emerged from the bathroom, Mizuki had already finished dressing, having accustomed herself to changing quickly. As she prepared to leave, he stopped her to tidy her messy hair, treating her much like a child. Later in the cafeteria, Sano decided to order the same meal as Mizuki, and it turned out that the rest of the students were also enjoying kitsune udon. Mizuki noticed the male students' excitement regarding an upcoming softball match and inquired about the cause. Noe exclaimed that their enthusiasm stemmed entirely from the prospect of girls being present in the crowd. When Mizuki remained confused, he explained that, as students of an all-boys school with few opportunities to interact with girls, a game against a co-ed school represented a rare chance to meet someone. It often seemed that the spectators were more serious about the event than the athletes themselves. Back in class, Nakatsu struggled to compose himself. Blushing profusely and overthinking his approach, he eventually summoned the courage to ask Mizuki if she would cheer for their school during the soccer game. He was overjoyed when she agreed, though his behavior confused everyone else. However, his excitement vanished when Mizuki arrived at the game accompanied by the rest of the group, a development he perhaps should have anticipated. Nevertheless, once the match began, he became determined to score repeatedly to demonstrate his skills. Following the victory, Mizuki congratulated him, remarking with her characteristic charm that he had looked very cool on the field. Her praise thrilled him, making him feel as though she were solely on his side. Kagurazaka then approached Sano, having heard of his return to the track team. As they had once competed for the high jump gold medal, he teased Sano, questioning whether he could actually jump or if he would get spooked and run away again. Mizuki refused to let the insult pass. She retorted that Kagurazaka was the only scared boy now that Sano had returned. Realizing she might have sounded too feminine, she paused, but Sano did not seem to notice. While Sano remained indifferent, merely looking forward to their next meeting, Mizuki was furious, thinking Kagurazaka was a jerk. According to Sakime, Kagurazaka was so talented that no peer could beat his records until Sano appeared 3 years prior. Since then, Kagurazaka had viewed Sano as a rival, though Sano paid him little attention. Mizuki was so consumed by anger that she could not focus on her homework. Sano eventually informed her that the shower was free, adding that she looked like a monkey due to her earlier outburst, though he thanked her nonetheless. Shortly after, they found themselves staring at a box of lemons sent by Kayashima's family, realizing that even with cooking and tea, they could not possibly consume them all. The next day, Mizuki suggested to Nakatsu that they use the lemons in a hot pot. While planning the hot pot party, Kagurazaka encountered Mizuki and asked for the location of the track team's practice. Disbelieving that she was a guy, he forcibly lifted her onto his shoulder, compelling her to act as his guide. Upon arriving at the track field, Mizuki apologized to Sano, explaining that she had been grabbed against her will. Sano calmly instructed Kagurazaka to put her down. Although Kagurazaka was confused by Sano's irritation, he complied, only for Mizuki to immediately slap him. Sano intervened before Kagurazaka could retaliate, telling him to back off. When Kagurazaka threatened to borrow Mizuki next time, Sano grabbed his shirt. Kagurazaka reciprocated, vowing to crush Sano if he was even worth the effort in his current state. Mizuki attempted to retort, but Sano silenced her. Unable to tolerate Kagurazaka's disrespect, she shouted that someone like him could never crush Sano. Kagurazaka remained unfazed until she called him a stumpy-legged kitsune, a comment that finally made Sano giggle. He struggled to suppress his laughter, continuing to chuckle about it even later in the cafeteria. Later that evening, while checking on the dog, Yujiro, Mizuki confided in him about the first time she had seen Sano on TV. She described the awe she felt witnessing Beauty in a high jump for the first time. At that time, she had been fighting with a friend, but every time Sano set a new personal best, she felt a rush of inspiration to try her hardest as well. She revealed that the friend from her past was now her best friend, the very person who had given her the courage to speak to Sano. Unbeknownst to her, Sano was nearby and overheard everything. He approached and asked her to accompany him the following day so he could show her his high jump. Mizuki was filled with joy, hardly able to believe she would witness it firsthand. Unfortunately, the reality did not meet her expectations. Sano repeatedly failed the jump, hitting the bar every time. As he began to feel pathetic for failing to clear a mid-height jump, she begged him to stop. Holding his hands tightly, she promised with a trembling voice that he would jump perfectly again. Sano replied that a high school boy should not be whimpering, acknowledging that she had given him a way forward rather than letting him run from his past. He credited her with showing him how to face the high jump again and asked her to pull herself together. In the infirmary, Umeda explained to Mizuki that Sano's struggle was psychological. His body remembered the intense pain of injury and unconsciously reacted to avoid it. Suddenly, Umeda emerged from behind the curtain in a ridiculous outfit, announcing it was time to dance, apparently enjoying the show he had performed at a recent college reunion. After changing back, he told her to stop overthinking. He explained that everyone faces obstacles they must overcome themselves, but it is in those moments that they most need someone waiting to catch them. Unsure if she could fulfill that role, Mizuki decided to start with what she could do. While thinking of ways to cheer Sano up, she bumped into Nakatsu, causing him to spill the ingredients for that night's hot pot party. Sekime then arrived with drinks, and with the stove ready, they were all set. During the party, Mizuki poured a grape drink for Sano. Shortly after, he decided to step out as his head felt heavy and something felt wrong. Mizuki went to check on him when he failed to return. Meanwhile, Nanba encountered the group having the hot pot party and noticed an uncorked bottle of wine, which appeared to be a gift meant for Umeda. When Mizuki entered the room, she noticed Sano's face was red and wondered if he was sick. He leaned in, causing her to back up against the cupboard, and while still out of his senses, he suddenly kissed her. Flustered, Mizuki pushed back and punched Sano, then ran out of the room in a panic. Once outside, tears poured down her face. She liked Sano so much, yet she wondered why she could not stop crying. The next day, Sano came to class with a black eye, unable to remember what had even happened. Nakatsu felt he should have taken the day off, but Sano did not want to. On the sidelines, Mizuki couldn't help but feel nervous. She approached, handing him a handkerchief to cool down the bruise, all while avoiding his gaze. After that, she quickly left, knowing she was the one who gave him the black eye. During the lunch break, Sano thanked her for putting a blanket over him the previous night. The guilt eating her up was so intense that she could barely talk to him before running away again. She wondered if he truly didn't remember anything from the night before, but as her mind flashed back to the kiss, she flushed all over again. Namba then asked if someone had made her cry. She tried to deny it, but he wasn't fooled by her lies. Taking a seat, Mizuki told him that her head was having a hard time keeping up with the unexpected turn of events. Namba leaned in close to her face, offering to cheer her up, make her forget about all her troubles, and even give her some nice memories. That smooth talk might have worked, but she had to remind him she was a guy. Of course, he was only joking, but he then let her know that a bottle of alcohol had gotten mixed up with her drinks during the hot pot party. Realizing what had caused Sano to kiss her, Mizuki turned red all over again, though she lied to Namba about knowing who drank from the bottle. He then gave her a snack for keeping her company, and unknown to them, Dr. Umida was watching, as well as another pair of eyes. After class, Mizuki recalled that her dad had a friend who started indiscriminately kissing people when drunk, and she wondered if Sano was just like that. When she opened her locker, thousands of thumbtacks poured out. Picking up a second piece of paper from the ground, she saw it read, "Die." Sano ripped it up, claiming it was just a prank and telling her not to worry. On the other hand, Nakatsu was scared to the bone. Believing this was obviously a threat, he proposed they walk home together. Mizuki insisted she was fine and decided to head out alone since she was supposed to be a guy now and couldn't be seen freaking out over things like this. Nakatsu told Sano that he was being a bit mean to Mizuki. Later, some members of the tennis team came looking for her. When they asked Sano for her whereabouts, he coldly told them to get lost, leaving Nakatsu wondering if he was genuinely pissed off. In her room, Mizuki realized someone must hate her, but she couldn't figure out what she did to make them that angry. Rather than letting it bother her, she decided she didn't have time to get distracted. She was way more worried about Sano at that moment. He entered the room, curious as to why she was worried about him. She asked if his eye was still sore, to which he answered that it hurt when pressure was applied, but it wasn't a big deal. That was a relief for her, yet she still felt a bit awkward looking at his face. Refusing to let things remain awkward, she asked him to get changed so they could head to the dining hall together. It finally dawned on her that Sano was her first kiss, causing her to fall to her knees. The shock had put it clean out of her mind when it happened. The next day, everyone gathered around waiting for her to open her locker. It was all clear, and she felt a sense of relief, though it was cut short as she picked up her shoes. They were completely soaked and dripping. Nakatsu was visibly upset on her behalf, but she refused to let this get to her. After all, she could simply air out the shoes. Her mind was made up. If Sano faced any obstacles, she would be the one there for him, so she didn't have any time to waste worrying about this stuff. Later, Dr. Umida approached Sano, telling him that something was going on with his roommate and advising him to keep an eye out for Mizuki. That night, while Mizuki was talking to Nakatsu and the others about her brother, Nakao showed up, calling it all stupid. He mocked her for being 16 and still bragging about her older brother, even claiming she was still breastfeeding as if they weren't at an age to stop relying on a cool older sibling. Nakatsu wouldn't stand for it. He yelled at Nakao, demanding he apologize to Mizuki. That was when Namba showed up, asking why they were yelling. He made it clear that he didn't like what Nakao was doing, causing Nakao to storm off. After Namba left, No speculated that Nakao might be the one bullying Mizuki. Sekime also agreed. After all, Nakao had lost a school idol vote to her once. Mizuki asked that they drop the whole thing, feeling these were just baseless accusations. The next day in class, her desk was painted boldly with the word "Go home." Trying to keep it together, she didn't want this to get to her. But she was finally fed up and ready to figure out who was behind this. Hiding behind a wall, she waited until the culprit approached her locker and grabbed his hand. She couldn't believe her eyes. It was Nakao. It became obvious why when his phone dropped, revealing a wallpaper of Namba. Now she understood his reason. Before she could explain, he shouted at her that he hated her. Ever since she came to the school, Namba had been paying more attention to her, even though Nakao was there long before her. The thought of it made him feel pathetic, believing Namba would never notice him now. He told her to go tell all the teachers and students if she wanted. On the contrary, Mizuki wanted to be friends. She understood how he felt, knowing what it was like to fall for someone. That was why she thought they could actually be pretty good friends. Nakao thought she was weird, but they laughed about it while walking out together. Close by, Sano watched and overheard the whole thing. Shortly after, Mizuki met up with him outside, letting him know she caught the culprit, but that they were all good now. Walking back together, she wished she could always walk next to him like this. Suddenly, Kagurazaka showed up. Mizuki immediately walked up to him, pushing him to leave, but he put her in a headlock. Then, he asked Sano to join the spring preliminaries, given that he had set a new record. He saw this as the perfect chance to crush Sano in front of as many spectators as possible. As Kagurazaka left, Mizuki seemed worried about his new record, but Sano told her not to worry. Afterward, he went to practice his high jump, and she was thrilled to see him make the jump this time. On their way back, he asked if it wouldn't have been better for her to go home for the winter break, but she just got there, so she didn't see the need. Plus, if he was going to train, there was no way she would miss being with him. Two girls from a nearby high school came by, giving Mizuki a present. Then she recalled it was Valentine's Day, but it wasn't like the girls were asking her out. It was just a way to show gratitude for standing up to Kagurazaka. Though she felt conflicted, Mizuki accepted. The second girl gave her chocolate to Sano. She had been a fan of his since middle school and was happy to see he was getting back on track. She also used this chance to ask him out. Seeing this, Mizuki felt a tightness in her chest. Although he declined the girl, the feeling in Mizuki's chest wasn't stopping. Later, she told Dr. Omeda what happened. He told her she was wet behind the ears and found it adorable. It wasn't like she could tell Sano she was a girl, hence her jealousy. She had no idea what to do about it. Umeda told her to simply reveal herself, but Mizuki couldn't possibly do that. She questioned if she wanted to stay by Sano's side, wondering if it meant she couldn't love him unless she was a girl. Mizuki felt a lot better after talking to him, and Umeda claimed they were cut from the same cloth. He too suffered from unrequited love. His best friend from high school had a cruel and terrible personality, the kind of guy who knew exactly how Umeda felt and still manipulated him while pretending to be none the wiser. Mizuki then received a text from her brother telling her that he was coming to Japan and looking forward to seeing her. Mizuki barged into the infirmary, inadvertently interrupting the school doctor, Umeda, who was in the middle of a sweet session with his lover. Ignoring the awkward atmosphere, she desperately begged him to lend her an outfit suitable for a young lady. Although he initially told her to figure it out herself, he was the only one she could depend on. As she turned to leave dejectedly, he told her to wait. The next morning, Mizuki snuck out of her room to find a place to change. When she emerged, she was dazzling in a cute outfit. It had been so long since she had worn a skirt. Thanks to Umeda, his little sister, Ryo, had been able to help with the clothing. Unknown to Mizuki, Sano was spying nearby, and seeing her in the outfit made him realize just how much she truly looked like a girl. Later, Mizuki met up with her brother, Shizuki, and jumped into his arms. They were overjoyed to see each other. He lifted her up and kissed her on the cheeks. However, everyone around them stared, wondering if this was a display of forbidden sibling romance. Shizuki, seeing that she had cut her hair, was moved to tears, as he had really loved her long hair. They stopped to get drinks, where Shizuki explained that he was in Japan on an exchange program between his office and Japanese medical schools for 2 weeks. For these 2 weeks, Mizuki knew she would have to keep him from discovering she was attending an all-boys school. The situation was overwhelming, but she insisted she was old enough to make her own decisions. When Shizuki asked if she had met the famous high jumper she admired, Mizuki quickly excused herself, promising to show him around Tokyo another time. Her brother always had a grudge against Sano, so she decided it was best to keep her mouth shut. Back at school, while Mizuki and Nakao were chatting away, Nakao was filled with jealousy, wondering when they had gotten so close. Pouring out his troubles, Nakao complained about the cold reply he had received from Nanba that morning. Mizuki totally understood how he felt. If a crush was curt with you, it could ruin your whole day. Nakao felt that he and Mizuki were the only ones who understood this pain, though Mizuki didn't actually know exactly how he felt about her. Nakatsu tried to interrupt their chat, but Nakao told him it was a meeting for cute boys only. Feeling insulted, Nakao questioned what part of him wasn't cute. Nakao retorted that, for starters, he had no sense of aesthetics. While they argued, Mizuki used the chance to slip away. She bumped into Sano and asked where he had been. He mentioned he had been talking to the team's supervisor and planned to compete in the preliminaries. After school, she wished him luck as he went to practice, certain that he would be able to jump when the time came. Suddenly, Shizuki called out her name from behind. She was busted. He questioned why she was at a boys' school. She tried to explain, but he wasn't having it. Grabbing her hand, he demanded she come with him. Mizuki resorted to biting his arm as she struggled to break free. Sano arrived and told Shizuki to let go. Realizing this was the Sano his sister was obsessed with, Shizuki immediately accused him of seducing her. Shizuki then demanded to see Sano's famous high jump. After all, it was the reason Mizuki had come there, and he wanted to get it over with. Mizuki mistakenly blurted out that Sano was still recovering from the aftermath of an accident. After grasping the situation, Shizuki decided his sister could remain in Japan on one condition. Sano would have to clear the high jump before it was time for Shizuki to leave. With the stakes set, Sano decided to pick up his training before the preliminaries. He asked Mizuki to handle walking his dog, Yujiro, for the time being. By evening, she came to the field where Sano was practicing. Staring at him, she felt helpless, unable to offer any technical aid. Nakatsu showed up and noticed she looked down. When she assured him it was nothing, he invited her to hang out once she was done walking the dog. Shortly after, they stopped by a restaurant where Nakatsu treated her to as much food as she wanted. He usually came there, but it was his first time bringing someone. He admitted he was feeling homesick. When he first came to Tokyo, he was the only one from Osaka, so whenever he felt lonely, he came there to remind himself he wasn't alone. He claimed the okonomiyaki tasted just like home. His words moved Mizuki, and she thanked him warmly. Returning to the room, Mizuki tried not to wake Sano, but he could smell the food she was carrying. She had brought some okonomiyaki for him. As he sat to eat, she mustered the courage to wish him good luck, admitting that such a small sentiment took a lot of thought and energy for her. He told her it was the least she could say to make the jump worth it for him. However, he clarified that his primary goal was to beat his rival, Kagurazuka. Her situation was secondary. He asked her to stop worrying endlessly and cheer up. Despite just eating, he asked if she wanted to get dinner, noting he would need a lot more energy for what was at stake. The next day, Shizuki walked around the school grounds in a dark suit and shades, thinking it was the best disguise. However, Umeda and everyone else noticed him immediately. He stood out like a sore thumb. Umeda asked if he needed help, and when Shizuki mentioned his sibling attended the school, the doctor deduced he was Mizuki's brother. He invited Shizuki into his office. Shizuki mentioned that he didn't have a bad impression of the school, but he hadn't seen anything great either. Umeda then told him about an unusual transfer student, someone who was there to chase a high jumper they admired, noting that one might almost think the student was a girl based on how sweet he was. Unable to handle the pressure of being discovered, Shizuki took his leave. Meanwhile, Mizuki was helping Sano on the field. With their faces close together, she blushed, recalling her first kiss with him. Flustered, she accidentally slammed the tablet into his face. Just then, Kagurazuka showed up and grabbed Sano's collar. He asked why Sano was still carrying that baggage around and called him out for abandoning the high jump after his injury. Sano, however, didn't care what he said. He had made a promise to Mizuki not to run away again. This time, he was jumping for himself, and the preliminaries were the first step. Still, Kagurazuka wasn't going to let him get away with quitting while he was ahead. Afterwards, Sano asked Mizuki what she would do if he couldn't jump again. She told him her brother would most likely drag her back home, but she wanted to stay in Japan specifically, here in Osaka. He told her to stay, urging her to follow her heart. However, Shizuki appeared in front of them and declared it wasn't his place to let her stay. He made it clear that he would take Mizuki back if Sano couldn't jump. Time was ticking, and Sano had less than a week. It seemed impossible. Mizuki stood up for him, letting her brother know that Sano was doing his best, but Shizuki claimed a high jumper who couldn't jump was nothing but pathetic. Sano didn't say a word back. He simply left when the coach called for him. Furious, Mizuki screamed at her brother, "I hate you." Struck by her words, Shizuki fell to his knees. Suddenly, trying to get his baby sister out of a boys' school felt like a crime, and he questioned if God was dead. A few days later, Mizuki sat in a corner with Yujiro, waiting for Sano. When he showed up, she mentioned how she had told her brother off. Sano ignored the drama, simply asking what was for dinner and telling her to forget about the whole thing. He declared the case closed. His cool demeanor made her fall in love with him even more. A few days later, the stadium was packed with spectators. Mizuki and her friends met up with Shizuki, and she thanked him for coming. Before the competition started, she met with Sano to give him what she thought was a good luck charm. However, because she had asked Nakatsu for help, it was actually a love and marriage charm. Nevertheless, Sano was happy to accept it. In the stands, Shizuki sat beside Nakatsu, asking him what kind of person Sano was. Nakatsu told him he would have to watch and find out for himself. Soon after, Sano was called up to make his jump. Mizuki prayed desperately for him as he took off. Sano floated beautifully in midair, and once he landed, the bar remained in place. He had made it. Seeing this, Shizuki quietly took his leave. Filled with joy, Mizuki couldn't stop crying. Sano embraced her warmly right there on the track until the referee broke them up. As far as high jumps went, the height was still pretty low, but his form was better than anyone else's. This was just the beginning. Kagurazaka told him to stop spacing out and work his way up until Sano was on par with him. Though he didn't express it well, he too was rooting for Sano. After the competition, Mizuki got a text from her brother asking her to at least come home for Christmas and New Year's. Unfortunately, Sano didn't make it past the preliminaries, but it was still a huge step for him. As of that day, Mizuki successfully remained a student at the private high school, now entering her second year. As the school term came to an end, Mizuki was met with bad news. Nanba explained that Dorm 2 was undergoing urgent renovations to replace deteriorated water pipes, meaning all students had to return home for summer break. In the cafeteria, Mizuki looked utterly dejected. After making a big scene with her brother about refusing to return to the United States, the idea of having to go back now was unbearable. While she was lost in thought, Sano smacked the back of her head, telling her to eat properly. Watching them, No remarked that Sano looked like a mother cat diligently grooming her kitten. Embarrassed by the comment, Sano headed back to his room, ordering Mizuki to stay behind and finish her meal. The others felt that Sano had changed since Mizuki arrived. He seemed more cheerful and less guarded. This was a stark contrast to his previously distant demeanor, which had caused constant friction with Nakatsu. Soon after, Nakatsu approached Mizuki's door. He tried to convince himself he simply wanted to invite her to hang out, but internally he was spiraling, questioning if these romantic feelings meant he might be gay. Sano approached, and they entered the room together. Gathering his courage, Nakatsu asked Mizuki if she would stay at his place in Osaka, assuring her that his mother would welcome her. However, fearing her secret gender might be discovered by his family, Mizuki felt compelled to decline. Nakatsu left the room and sank to his knees in the hallway, completely heartbroken. Meanwhile, Sano invited Mizuki to his place, though he noted they would have to share a room. Since they were already sharing a dorm, he told her not to worry about formalities. Mizuki decided to think it over, but with no other options, she eventually forced herself to sleep. Hours later, Sano was shocked to see her climb into his bunk. Despite the need for caution, she was incredibly unguarded. When he tried to wake her, she simply rested her head on his chest, leaving him in a tight situation. By morning, Mizuki was startled to wake up next to him. Sano explained that she had sleepwalked, and she quickly apologized. Realizing she wasn't wearing her chest binder, she feared he might have discovered her secret. She tried to play it off by reminding him that they were both guys, implying it shouldn't matter. However, Sano, who had barely slept a wink, found it insane how defenseless she was. Later at the infirmary, Mizuki offered to do chores for Dr. Umeda if he would let her stay at his place. He refused, explaining that he was leaving the next day for a passionate vacation to a southern island. Just then, Ayo walked in, furious that she couldn't reach him regarding the Hayama boarding house. When Nanba arrived and called Umeda his uncle, Mizuki was shocked to realize the three were related. Nanba was their nephew, making Ayo his mother. Nanba mentioned that Ayo was coming to pick Umeda up personally. Terrified, Umeda tried to flee, telling his nephew to send regards to the demon witch. Just as he reached the door, Ayo was standing there. She grabbed him by the throat until he confessed his vacation plans. She scolded him for being heartless, as she had asked for his help over a year ago. Thinking quickly to escape her wrath, Umeda roped Mizuki into the situation, claiming she was itching to work for Ayo. Scanning Mizuki's face, Ayo seemed to like her, noting that Mizuki reminded her of when she used to play dress-up with Umeda. By the time she turned back, the doctor was already gone. Afterward, Mizuki shared the news about the job opening at the Hayama boarding house with Sano. Since the position included room and board, it was the perfect solution to her housing dilemma during the dormitory renovations. Sano, needing a part-time job anyway, decided to sign up as well. When Nakatsu heard about their plans, he refused to be left out. Driven by a desperate need to ensure Mizuki and Sano weren't left alone together, he insisted on joining them. As long as he had breath in his lungs, he wasn't about to let the two of them have unsupervised time. Upon arriving at the boarding house, the landlady, Ayo, immediately put them to work. She asked Mizuki to serve a plate, expressing her gratitude for the help since they were severely short-handed this season. The only other staff she had managed to hire were 2 local college students, so the arrival of 3 high schoolers was a blessing. However, the atmosphere shifted when Ayo called over the male worker, Makita. He had been busy flirting with female customers, prompting a stern warning from Ayo. She told him clearly that while his romantic life was his own business, any inappropriate touching would result in immediate termination. As she spoke, Makita's gaze drifted toward Mizuki, and his expression darkened into something sinister. As they began their shifts, Makita made a point of hovering around Mizuki, getting uncomfortably close and touchy under the guise of guiding her work. Sano noticed this immediately. Visibly irritated by the older boy's behavior, Sano called Mizuki over to help him with the dishes, effectively pulling her away from Makita's grasp. Seeking a moment of peace, Mizuki went outside to feed the boarding house dog, Yujiro. However, Makita wasn't done. He followed her out, placing his arm around her shoulder and claiming he wanted to join because he loved dogs. Nakatsu, watching from a distance, couldn't just stand by. He shadowed them to ensure Mizuki was safe. While Mizuki fed Yujiro, Makita probed into her personal life, asking which of the two boys, Sano or Nakatsu, was her boyfriend. Mizuki tried to shut him down, insisting that it wasn't like that because she was a he. Makita twisted her words, interpreting them as a preference for male pronouns rather than a biological fact. He creepily suggested he would call her Mizuki-kun if she liked, adding that he loved her naivety. Just then, Nakatsu revealed himself. Although Mizuki yelled at Makita again that she was a guy, Makita only laughed it off. As they walked back, Mizuki could tell Nakatsu was furious, even though he claimed it was nothing. Later, feeling sweaty from the work, Mizuki went to change. She struggled to zip up her chest binder, realizing with horror that it was tighter than usual, proof that Ayo's delicious cooking had caused her to gain weight. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Nakatsu confronted Sano. He asked if Makita pissed him off, admitting that he hated how creepy the man was around Mizuki. Sano, maintaining his cool facade, curtly replied that it was none of their business. Nakatsu was deeply hurt by the dismissal. Unlike Sano and Mizuki, who were sharing a room, Nakatsu had been assigned a single room, amplifying his feelings of loneliness. Overcome with emotion, he ran off in tears. Moments later, Makita entered the kitchen, commenting on how he admired their close friendship. Sano finally dropped the mask, shooting Makita a look of pure loathing. The next day brought a new surprise. Mizuki was stunned to see the name Kagurazaka on the guest list. Sure enough, their rival arrived with his family. True to form, Kagurazaka arrogantly assumed the food would be awful. Nakatsu called him an idiot, but it was Ayo who silenced the room. She scolded Nakatsu for his outburst, but assured Kagurazaka that she prepared all the meals herself. Upon seeing Ayo's beauty, Kagurazaka instantly blushed and backed down. He explained that his family's temple had a change of plans, so he was there in his parents' stead. Kagurazaka's sister, Tamami, then noticed Sano. She screamed in disbelief, declaring she had been a fan since middle school. While Kagurazaka dragged his embarrassing sister away, his baby sister, Kiyomi, wandered off and mistook Nakatsu for her brother. Mizuki kindly carried the child back to their room, accidentally walking in on Tamami, changing into a swimsuit. Unbothered, Tamami invited Mizuki in, expressing her thrill at Sano's presence. She boldly asked if Sano had a girlfriend. When Mizuki stammered that she didn't know, Tamami took this as a green light to use her hot body to snag him. Staring at Tamami's chest, Mizuki felt a sharp pang of jealousy, unable to believe the situation she was in. During lunch, Mizuki barely touched her food because her chest felt incredibly tight, and she wanted to avoid gaining any weight. She found Sano cleaning up, but before she could speak to him, Tamami rushed in and hugged him from behind. Although Sano explained he was working and asked her to let go, she refused. Mizuki stood staring speechlessly until Makita interrupted, asking her to help change the light bulbs at the entrance. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit Mizuki's chest, and she passed out. Sano rushed to the scene and carried her away, an action that only served to increase Makita's growing suspicions. When Mizuki came to, she realized she had been unable to breathe because of the tight binder she forced herself to wear. Sano suggested calling a doctor, but she insisted she was fine. He advised her to rest for the day while he returned to work. Realizing he was leaving, she suddenly held him back. Flustered and embarrassed, she apologized. Sano leaned in, asking if she wanted him to stay, and she nodded in agreement, blushing. He agreed to remain with her, at least until she fell asleep. Meanwhile, Nakatsu stood at the door, agonizing over whether to enter. He felt he would be a bother, yet he knew he would be too worried to function if he didn't check on Mizuki. Ayo eventually smacked him, telling him to stop the one-man show and get back to work. Hours later, Mizuki woke up from a long sleep to find Sano was gone. Realizing how much she had sweated, she headed straight for the shower. Removing the binder was a huge relief, though she noticed pinch marks on her sides and assumed she had put on weight. While she was soaking in the tub, she heard Nakatsu's voice as he entered the room. Panic set in when she realized she had forgotten to lock the bathroom doors. Just as she turned her back, Nakatsu opened the doors, but he quickly closed them, leaving her confused. Outside the door, Nakatsu wondered if this was a chance for them to bathe together. The moral part of his mind told him how wrong it was, but his degenerate side saw nothing wrong with two bros sharing a bath. Reaching for the door, he tried convincing himself that Mizuki was just another guy, but he couldn't shake his hesitation. When he finally took a peek, the shock caused him to pass out on the ground with a nosebleed. Mizuki tossed a towel over his face, quickly grabbed her clothes, and left to find help. The next morning, Mizuki watched Sano from the window as he trained for the upcoming tournament. He looked like he was enjoying himself, and she enjoyed watching him. However, Tamami ruined the moment again by pestering Sano about going to the beach with her, despite him never making such a promise. While Sano tried to hold Tamami back, Makita approached Mizuki. Sano quickly noticed Makita looking at the two of them. Makita gave him a sinister smirk, which Sano did not find amusing. Makita mentioned he was going to buy some things later and asked Mizuki to tag along. As Makita left, Kagurazaka approached Mizuki, curious about who Makita was. He noted that Mizuki and Makita seemed to be hanging out a lot and asked her about her relationship with Sano. She explained that she and Sano weren't together all the time and had different work tasks, but Kagurazaka felt that behavior was unlike her. Even though he found Tamani annoying, Kagurazaka admitted he felt Mizuki was more of a loose cannon. He appreciated that side of her and told her to stop looking so down. When she teased him about trying to cheer her up, he pretended not to care what happened to either of them. She then suggested he must have feelings for Sano. Embarrassed, he clarified that he liked women, but warned her that he didn't like Makita's vibe. Shortly after, Mizuki helped Makita unload groceries from his car. She thought he was a genuinely nice person. She and Sano finally caught a break, but just as she left to get drinks, Tamami came to bother Sano again. Makita came over, commenting that Mizuki looked like an abandoned kitten. He offered her a drink and asked her to share the break with him. Seeing his kindness, she couldn't perceive him as a bad guy. As they chatted, Sano kept a watchful eye on them while Tamami continued to give him a world of trouble. Later that night, Ayo told the group they could go to the beach the next day since there was a lull between guest checkouts. Back in their room, the thought of the beach excited Mizuki, but she wondered if she would be able to enter the water. Sano then asked if Makita had done anything weird to her, clearly worried. He noted that Makita was being touchy by putting his arm around her shoulder, but Mizuki claimed he was just being friendly. She was oblivious to his true intentions, which was exactly why Sano was trying to warn her. Still, she insisted that such friendliness was normal back in the States. She then complained about Sano being friendly with the large-chested Tamami. She stormed out of the room, but with her back against the door, she instantly regretted her words. She knew they weren't lovers and couldn't become so, given that she was currently living as a boy. Looking at her chest, Mizuki realized the binder wasn't tight because of weight gain, but because she had actually grown. She was overjoyed, but knew she couldn't properly enjoy the development given the circumstances. At the beach the next day, Mizuki was the only one wearing a sweater. Nakatsu questioned her choice, but she claimed she was just playing it safe. Mayumi and Ayo met up with them, looking lovely. Nakatsu then made the mistake of commenting that Ayo's hat gave away her age and screamed that she would rather die than get a tan. He was promptly knocked down onto the hot sand while everyone else ran off to play beach volleyball in the water. Mizuki could only stand and watch. Shortly after, staring at Sano in the water, she reflected on how they hadn't spoken since she stormed out. She approached him to apologize for the previous night, but before he could respond, Tamami ran up to him again. Mizuki decided to leave, but Tamami dragged her aside, asking if Sano hated the color orange because of her orange swimsuit. Being a kind person, Mizuki assured her that he liked girls in bright colors and wouldn't have a problem with it. Tamami thanked her with a bright smile, and Mizuki found she couldn't bring herself to hate the girl. Afterward, Mizuki went looking for Nakatsu and the others. Some guys approached her, trying to get her attention. She wanted nothing to do with them and tried to walk away, but they dragged her back. Sano saw what was happening and ran to save her, but Makita arrived first, pulling her away from the men. He warned her that standing around looking lost would attract guys like flies. Nakatsu showed up shortly after, and she left with him. In the end, Sano couldn't do anything but glare angrily at Makita, who seemed to enjoy toying with him. During lunch, the staff served watermelon to the guests. Mizuki took a tray out and met with Sano. She offered him some, and they sat together eating as she chattered about various topics. Sano had been thinking the whole time about how to apologize for the previous night, realizing it was ridiculous to fight over Makita. Mizuki felt happy hearing him say that. As she left to put the plate away, Sano thought about how dense, rash, and stubborn she was, and how she had zero self-preservation instinct. He felt he really had to look out for her. Many questions ran through his mind. What was he to her, and when did being together become so natural? She had a soft side but despised losing, and was crazy enough to come from the States pretending to be a guy. Yet, there he was, pretending he didn't know her secret. He wondered what exactly he was trying to achieve. Makita then approached Sano, demanding to talk man-to-man, obviously regarding the battle for Mizuki's heart. Thank you for watching this week's anime recap. If you liked the video, please help this channel by leaving a like and subscribe to help us reach our goal of 30K subscribers.